Hello and welcome to Talking Reds, a Nottingham Forest podcast, hosted by myself, Greg Oram, and my fellow Forest fanatic from across the Atlantic, Mr. Richard Spray.
In America, it's free to remain free in America. Soldiers dying overseas, so America can say what we believe. My America, I will never take a knee.
Good morning, Richard. How are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm doing great, man. I'm really excited for today. Lots going on. Excited.
Indeed. Now then, as Forest fans, have any of you out there ever wondered about some of the facts, figures, stats and records associated with our beloved club? Have you ever thought about players and managers from the past and matches played and scorelines and the grounds that came before the City ground? Maybe you've thought, if only there was a digital record or a website even, where I could get lost in the pages and multitudes of information about the tricky trees. Well, our guest today is the man responsible for building and pouring hours and hours and hours of time into what can only be described as the Wiki-Forest-pedia, the place where every Forest fan would want to dive into and look at both the past and present in minute detail and enjoy any kind of stat you fancy about the club. So we're honoured today that he's joined us to tell us all about the website, thecityground.com. He's going to tell us about his own Forest story and more. So please give it up and welcome Gary Cumberland. Good morning, Gary. Also over in America, you're in Arizona, so I've got a couple of expats. I guess you could say you're an expat, aren't you? Originally from Nottingham, I think you said, and now living in Arizona. So it's even earlier in the morning for you than what it is for Richard. So thank you so much for joining us. We're thrilled that you'd give up your time to come and chat to us. We're going to jump straight into it. We ask every person who comes onto our series, the one with, to tell us about themselves, their own Forest story, how and why you're a Forest fan. Did it come as a inheritance from your dad or another family member, and all those kind of things. So the floor is yours, sir.
Wow, thank you. That was a tremendous introduction. Thank you. I hope I can live up to that. It's great to meet you guys, honestly. So I'm Gary Cumberland, originally from Beeston in Nottingham. I was born there a few years ago. Let's leave it at that. So as far as my Forest thing, so I was 9 or 10 when Cluffy joined, I guess. So was just that right age where your teams picked you. You don't pick your team; they pick you. I feel. Hey, so I was just that right age when we won the league. I remember that. Won the title. And then the European 2 and a bit years. My dad took me my first game, probably 79, 80-ish, I think. It was a home game against Everton, was my first game at the City ground. And just not put a foot wrong since. I had a season ticket there for 15, 16 years, something like that, I think. Right up until about 1999, which is when I had an opportunity to come over to the States with work. So I took that. The company asked me if I moved to Scottsdale in Arizona. I said, sure, it sounds great. So I got here. I haven't had a bad day since in the US. But the beauty of it now with the internet is that I can watch the games as much as possible. I used to subscribe to the club when we were down in the championship. They had a nice subscription thing. You could watch all the games live. Now, Premier League's a little different at the behest of which channel it's on over here, as Richard, I'm sure you're aware. So plenty of subscriptions to various channels, but one of them gets me 90% of the games I think I can watch live. So, and they're either at like 6, 7 a.m. on a Saturday morning or midday if it's an evening game. So it's pretty easy to keep up with the stuff. But yeah, I'm lucky. I've been all over the ground with my season ticket. I think all four sides of the ground over the 15 years I had it. My dad still got his after probably 45 years now. I bet he's still got his season ticket. My nephew Tom goes with him. Talk to my dad every Saturday or whenever it is after the game. He still goes. I used to go to a lot of the away games as a kid, so got to see a lot of other grounds. And yeah, I love it. Hopefully my kids will join in as well at some point soon when they're old enough to appreciate.
I think you said you got a 6 and a 7-year-old. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, I skillfully left that later in life, and so we've got 6 and 7-year-old right now. They're already, I think, on their third Forest shirt. They tend to outgrow them.
So you're passing the baton down if you can to your children. Rich is doing the same. So in America, so he's got in Oklahoma his children running around with Forest shirts, and it sounds like you've got the same in Arizona. Fantastic.
Yes.
Amazing. I mean, do you get back to Nottingham often? I mean, you've been over in the States for a while. But do you get home to see a game every now and again, or has it been a while since you were back?
It's been 6 years since we were last back now. That's after our son Alex was born. We went over with him actually 3 times in the first year. But since then, we've got our daughter Avery, and they both have passports, both have British and US passports, which we're jonesing to use it a little bit more. But no, my last game was, the last live game was 6 years ago. It was Sunderland at home. 1-1 draw, I feel. I think I went to the Leeds game as well while I was over there away at Leeds, up at Ellen Road. But no, it's been a few years since I was in the ground now, unfortunately.
Fantastic. Okay, so you are a Forest fan. Your dad's a Forest fan. Other family members, it sounds like, are Forest fans as well. So the big question, and something that I'm excited to know, is what was it that inspired you to create this fantastic website, which is thecityground.com. I'm going to put the link, when you're talking in a second, I'll put the link in the comments for anybody that hasn't found it yet, because it is an absolute treasure trove. It's so unbelievable in terms of the information that's on it. We just have to know what inspired the creation of the website, the hows, the whens, the wheres. You know, give us a deep dive from the first kind of idea and genesis of it into how you started, into how you developed it, into where it is today.
Yeah, it was about 10 years ago, I think, I had the first idea for this. I'm probably a nerd when it comes to data and stats and stuff, and I love it. There was a book came out when I was a kid. Oh my word, it was the old chairman, Ken Smales, did a book, and it was just page after page of lists of games and our lineups. And he was, it was just just lineups. And I remember as a kid, I was like probably about 10 or 11, and I must have seen an advert for this in the paper. So I sent off probably, I don't know, £5 at the time or something like that, even at that age, and to like support this thing. So I got a copy of the book. My name's on the back of it, and I always had a liking for stats and stuff. So yeah, I 10 years ago, there's nothing out there for Forest, but then I did find this website. It was called Bridport Red, I think, probably by a guy who lives in Bridport. And then that suddenly went offline. So we can do this myself. So found an old archived copy of his site, got some info from there. Then put it all into a database, used Ken Smales' book to kind of hand type a bunch of stuff in, and then went live. Well, first of all, I found that I was trying to work out what URL should I use, and tried a bunch of them, and then found out thecityground.com was still available. I'm surprised at that. I bet in this day and age, I thought clubs would have snapped up at least the URL for their ground, as well as a bunch of other stuff. BrianCloughWay as well.com was also available, but I went with thecityground.com. I have a bit of a background in IT, but not a developer. So learned a whole bunch of coding, learned how to put it into a database and get that out on the internet. I remember the first time I saw some data on a page. Oh, this is pretty good. So probably the first time I put anything up there was 8, 9 years ago, something like that, I bet. And it was just me having some fun, learning some stuff at the time. I put a thing out on a forum, a forest forum. You've lost that loving feeling. I put a post out there saying, "Hey guys, I started a new website if anyone's interested." And someone put me in touch with a lady, it turns out lives in Skegness, Nicola, and she has been a treasure trove of stuff. She has sent me so many things that she knew, a whole bunch of games I didn't have, etc. So thanks to her, and she does a lot of genealogy research, so she comes up with a lot of great dates of birth for players, a lot of biography for them, and some match reports and stuff. So she was great, and I have a subscription to the British National Newspaper, the British Newspaper Archive, I think it is. So they have a lot of the old. You remember the Football Post in Nottingham? Saturday night, you could get that at about 5:30 after a game. So they have digital versions of those. So I can read those. I use those to get a lot of goal times that the goals were scored. And then in the last few years, a few other people have found the website and have mailed stuff and sent me some interesting information. There's also a guy named Tony Brown that lives in Towton in Nottingham, Long Eaton, around that area. And he runs a website called ENFA, ENFA, the English National Football Association. So he also has a whole bunch of data, which I can grab hold of sometimes. But I put it all out there. People have come to me. It's gone through a few iterations of trying to make it look a little nice. That's not my strong point, unfortunately, is coding that. But so it's at the point now, I think we've got about 7,550 games in total on the site, going back to that first one in 1865. 12,242 goals. So hopefully that goes up a little bit on Monday. Try to get pictures of the players on there, the managers. You had a fun question the other night, I think, on how many managers Forest have had in total. I think it was it last night? A couple of nights ago, you had a question on that night.
Yeah, it was yesterday, right?
You got it wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm curious to know, like, yeah, it was yesterday. Yeah, it was a great question from Greg. He pulled from your site. It's brilliant. Yeah, I was curious. Like you mentioned, I know working in business operations, and when you start projects and you get things, you always have these grandiose ideas, right? What you want to do, and then you're kind of like, okay, but then I got to maintain it, right? Then the IT people come in and say, well, yeah, but we got to maintain it. That's going to be a little bit difficult. We don't have the resources. So you're the resource, right, for maintenance. So how long does this take you, like on average, to keep this going? Because it's just incredibly rich with information. So I can only imagine I guess a lot of the historical stuff, once you get it there, you got it there. But the ongoing thing, how hard is that, and how much time do you have to allocate for that?
That's a great question. I think up to probably a couple of years ago, I could spend more time than I probably ought to have on it. But that was mainly just coming up with ideas on the different stats. So as well as just having the raw data, every game, the lineups, the goal scorers, managers, trying to get opposition lineup in there, etc. The fun part, my favorite part was doing the statistics. Oh, look at that! Thank you. And it's things like how many times have we been in Wembley? How long have we been in the Premier League? How many games do we play in the FA Cup, the European Cup, etc. But when I started to get into that, you could get a whole bunch of unnecessary stats, like who scored on their birthday. Who's the oldest player to play for us? Who's the youngest player? Who's scored against which clubs the most?
The connotations, the ins and outs of what you've done is like it's a joke. It's a joke. Really, what you've done, it's an absolute joke, because it's above and beyond anything else that I've ever seen in my life. Because you are coming up with these amazing stats that you'd find on most sites, but like you just said, all these other kind of side things, like you could go down rabbit hole after rabbit hole. If you go into the squad or the seasons, you've got some. I mean, I'm trying to share my screen, so it's quite small. You probably won't see it. Anyone listening, I'm sharing my screen and just kind of flicking through some of the tabs on Gary's website. But I encourage you to go and find it's thecityground.com. So if you're listening later, the cityground.com is where you need to go to. And trust me, you are going to go rabbit hole after rabbit hole, because there's just and I can't even put it into words how staggering it is, because I think to myself how much time you must have put into getting it to the point it is at. You got a list of every single player that's ever played for the club in alphabetical order, with their country, with their position, the years they were active, the amount of seasons they played, when their first game was, when their last game was. I mean, there are a couple of gaps for certain players, understandably, from the 1800s, etc. But even so, you've got how many they played, how many they won, drawn, lost, goals, yellows, reds, and if they were an unused sub. I mean, Richard, have you ever seen anything like this? You're
Sorry, I was on mute there. Yeah, buddy. No, I have not. And I think to myself, like, I can't even believe the club hasn't reached out to you. Because you
Right.
can only imagine, like, the kind of archivists and people that they probably have working for them who are wanting these kinds of things. And here it is. I mean, like, to your point, I've never seen anything like it anywhere for any type of sports team, let alone, for Nottingham Forest. But it would be interesting to know if the club's even aware of this, because I can fathom that there's probably some gaps for them as well in terms of the stuff that you've accumulated. But yeah, it's great that you have people also kind of pitching in and throwing things at you. Like, I know my mom was just in the UK doing a genealogy tour. I can't think of a better genealogy tour in my life than to do a forest genealogy tour of the UK and try to figure out all these different ins and outs and where things are, and finding historical documentation and photographs and things like that. It's incredible, man. I mean,
David,
like Greg said, it's impossible to process. It's just so much.
there's a guy, Gary, called David Marples, who is, I think, what we kind of term as a bit of a forest historian. Have you ever had any interaction with David? Have you looked at any of his work? Do you know who he is, for example?
Yeah, I know Dave Marples. Yeah, I don't, not personally, but I know the name. And
He
to go back to your thing about the club, it was I when I started this thing, I got it up and running, and then shot an email off to the club saying, "Hey, look, I do this." It was more of a, "Can I do this? Like, am I allowed to use the logo? I don't know." And never heard a thing back from them for years. But then, amazingly, I actually got an email from the club last year.
Oh, wow.
And that blew me away. It was a gentleman named Wilder Huey, and he's a marketing guy there. He reached out to me completely out of the blue and knocked my socks off. So I got back in touch with him. And
Well, what did he say? Well, when they got in touch with you, what were they saying to you? Stop immediately. Cease and desist. I hope not.
No, it was amazing. He reached out and said this was sometime last year, and that the club was having the 125th anniversary of being at the City Ground, and there was a home game against Burnley, which they'd chosen as being the celebration. Amazingly, he asked me if I wouldn't mind writing something up about the history of the City Ground. How long we've been there, how many games we've played, and that was it. He I think his main question was, how many games have we played at the ground? And I didn't have a split off at that time, or a thing at that side to say how many games we played at each of our 7, 8, 9 grounds, something like that. So I quickly pulled that together for him and sent that off to him. And then he said, amazingly, would I be prepared to write some copy that would go in the match day program? So he amazingly gave me the opportunity to put 4 pages together for the program against Burnley. So I did a write-up and a picture of me, the wife, and the kids. Then there, took it from when we first moved into the ground up through the redevelopment, Fluffy's last game, right up to the modern day. It was hard to keep it down to the number of words that he wanted, but that was the highlight up until being on this.
Is there is there like something you've discovered that is like Dan Scape in our comments here? Basically, he loves like random stats, right? He just loves random things. So, is there something that you've discovered that you found the most interesting and the most like intriguing? You know, that's probably a difficult question given all that you've cycled through, but I'm just curious, like what's the most intriguing thing or interesting or off the cuff sort of stat you've discovered or element about the club that you never would have even imagined?
Well, obviously being the age of the European thing, I remember the European Cup. I think the stats I do around that are my favorite. Like 4 players played in every game, and Gary Birtle scored his first goal for us in that first game against Liverpool. We beat the reigning champions 2 times. Liverpool had won it 2 years previously before they came up against us, and we could have been drawn against any club in Europe. And what did we go get in our very first round was Liverpool, the 2-time holders. The fact we beat them 2-0 is still that first game is probably still my most memorable, my favorite result, I think, of all time. But then, interestingly enough, we held it for 2 years and then go out the following year in the first round, 2-0 to CSKA Sofia. So kind of a nice little cyclical thing there, I guess. We beat the reigning 2-time champions 2-0, and then we go out ourselves 2-0.
Yeah.
I remember Glenn Murray as well. You remember him from a few years ago, striker.
Sure.
He scored, and there was talk on the radio of he was a few years old when he scored. Let me take a look at this. Glenn Murray was 37 years when he scored against Wickham back in 2021. I knew the club at the time on the radio. Colin Frey had mentioned he's got to be close to being the oldest player who's ever scored from us. So that was a reason I put up our oldest goal scorers. I went and found that there was a guy called Freddie Scott from the 50s who was 39 years old when he scored his last goal for us. So that was interesting to go dig that out. And again, it's not too much research. By the time you've got the lineups and the players, and if I have the player's age, it's all just database stuff. After that, I can work out how old a player was when he scored his goal on the fly. It's not something I need to go and type in every time. And back to your question earlier on as well, Rich, about how long does this take? Well, it's about just under 10 minutes to go type in a new game right now, which is what I do. When a game's finished, I'll give it a couple of hours to let all the information get out to the main websites like the Guardian, BBC, Sky Sports. So then I can get the lineup typed in about 10 minutes with notes of who scored, what times they scored the goals, the results, obviously, and do a little bit of a write-up if I get time there and then, the attendance, the referee. Once that's done, that's all in the database. It then takes, I then just click a button to process it, because from that raw data, it generates all the extra stuff like, hey, this is another time that the player has played in the Premier League or against this club.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that because you've got the first team, the squad, and you've got this season stats and then overall stats. So are you saying that once you've done your 10-minute match, when you push the button, does that filter through and update their stats automatically, or have you got to do them yourself? It does that for you? Because I was thinking that looks. I mean, that's why I thought this looks like it could be a long job. But if you've got it set up so it's basically feeding the information through, you've coded it so that I've updated the match and then it feeds the rest of the database. I mean, that's pretty fantastic, to be fair, right?
That's why it took all those years to do that hard work underneath. But now it's really just a case of maintaining it now. I've got all the stats out there. I think of one, maybe every other month right now. I don't add too many new ones on there. It's just lack of being able to think of a new one sometimes. But I'm also trying to work back through a lot of the games. Like I've got back through like the 60s, I think, with, like I mentioned, if I can read the Football Post from that evening or other news reports of a game online that scanned in on the British newspaper archive, then I can find things like the times of the goal scorers, which I don't have on too many games from 1960-ish, mid-1960s backwards. So I'm trying to find the time when I can to go through those and get those added in, because that'll just mean that I can work out things like halftime scores then. So my halftime scores, if someone says, "Hey,
Yeah,
we're winning 4-0 at halftime," and then go lose 5-4, how many times has that happened?
so 3-2. It's happened a few times. I can tell you that much.
Yeah, no kidding.
In the statistics tab on the cityground.com, your website, seems to be the area where you go into real detail on not random stuff, but stuff that, like, let's say, the full-time scorelines, the half-time scorelines, games since, streaks, the longest wins, the draws, results on each day of the year, even what was the result on New Year's Day, Christmas Day, Boxing Day, etc., etc. I mean, that's astonishing stuff. I mean, so every Forest fan listening to this and watching this, this is it. You're not going to find anywhere else, I bet you, where you can find anything you wanted to know about the club in its history and in its present day. And I have to ask you, I mean, what does your wife think about this, Gary? Because she must be tearing her hair out thinking, my God, I mean, my wife tears her hair out with me watching games so much. And there's you chomping away on getting this data. Does she think you're a bit mad?
Oh, that's probably was in the vows, I expect.
Amazing.
From both of us. And she loves it. Yeah, Patty is a very, very tolerant person of me sometimes. But I like I said, right now it's not that I spend ages in my mum's basement doing this stuff anymore. It's it kind of looks after itself. It's 10 minutes to put a new game in, and then press a button and off it goes. So the fact that she let me put all that work in for the last 4 or 5 years to get the thing up and running. After that, it's kind of takes care of itself. She might not even know that I do it, but when she sees this, she'll probably tell me, "Oh, I know you're doing it. Don't you worry."
It's amazing. I want to just quickly say good morning to Ian from Toronto. Ian Wigington, regular watcher of the pod. He talks about having 3 volumes of the History of Forest by John Lawson, and thinks maybe it's time for someone to pick up the baton and bring out a new volume of that. Well, maybe Gary's the man for that. Of course, Danscape was mentioned before. He is a regular contributor. He'd like to see a new section on the site for the most severe FA punishments over time, and we'll be talking about some of that a bit later on for definite. And also The Great Pretender. Looking good, Gary. Love your website. Amazing attention to detail. We could not agree more with that. So what next then, Gary? I mean, who's going to pick up the baton when it comes to you eventually saying, okay, I don't think I can do this anymore? And hopefully that's not going to be for a long, long time to come, because it's there now, and we talked offline, and it's your labour of love, really, and you've not really pushed it out there that much. I know you said you lost that love and feeling back in the day, and you reached out to the club, and they eventually come back to you, but it was Paul Morley, a great friend of ours, and a contributor on Talking Reds, who said to us, "Oh, I've found this site. Take a look at this, and maybe contact Gary Cumberland, because he could be a good guest." And so I did that straight away, thinking this is exactly the kind of guest we would love to have on. And so you're here, and I want to make sure that as many Forest fans as possible know about your site and find it and continue to look at it and dive into it. But can it go on forever? Can it be something you can maybe get your son or daughter to carry on down the line?
Well, they're 6 and 7, so
down the line. I mean,
down the line, yeah. Their attention span right now is.
I've got a 7-year-old, so I'm with you. I know how that feels.
Yeah, maybe Alex and Avery will take this on at some point. That's a good question. I mean, what happens then? So I don't know. If it suddenly stops being updated and there's no message on there that says I'm away for a few weeks, hang on, then you'll probably know the worst has happened to me. But I don't have a plan for carrying this on. It's all something I've built up. It's just trying to explain it to somebody. It'd take months, I think. The weird ins and outs that I got for building the data up and putting it in.
Yeah, I know you said, I mean, Greg's right. It's difficult to articulate. It's difficult to find the right words to kind of summarize what kind of value this has. It's impossible to measure, but yeah, I'm curious for anybody out there who's into graphic design. I mean, I've done a little bit of stuff. Greg knows I do some stuff for our channel, but I think we'd love to spice it up even more and make it even more engaging, right? Because it's a brilliant site. Like you said, you're like, oh, I need to get more into the graphic design side of it and the development and the design, you know, that aspect of it for the aesthetics and so forth. So for anybody out there who does that professionally, who's willing to give Gary a little bit of help. But yeah, I'm like Greg, I can't imagine if you have a different vision, like in your head, have you got some sort of point of which that you're like, this is exactly what I envisioned everything to be? Has it reached that point, or is it pretty much still just this living, breathing sort of thing? I'm sure, but I'm curious to know if you had a different, like another vision of what this gets to in terms of how it is more interactive or whatever the case may be.
I think my goal has been reached, honestly, with just getting the thing out there. So that was all I ever really had as a goal, was just trying to be complete and get as much in there. So I know there's little things, like I say, I want to go get the times that the goals were scored for the first 100 years or so, as much as possible, get those in there. And I'm not much of a phone user, I got to be honest, on the internet sometimes. So I know the site is not responsive. It's not going to be viewed any different on a phone than it is on the desktop. And I do all my work on my laptop, so I don't always appreciate what it looks like sometimes on the phone, unless I'm out and about and suddenly need a stat for whatever reason. I don't know. It just feels like it's a labor of love is the word that's been used a lot, and that's very true. Yep. It's me just keeping myself happy. And if people read it, and then that every time I get a new email from somebody, I'm like, wow, this is great. I mean,
it's your baby. You've created, birthed this wonderful in-depth site, like I said, a Wiki-Forest-pedia, you know, of everything you could ever want. Are you open to collaboration then? If someone was to come to you and say, look, I think I could bring something to this and maybe work with you, and it's your baby, but I'd like to maybe try and see if I can help in some way. Are you open to that? Or is it like, you know what, I'm pretty happy with it and with it how it is, and I think I just want to keep it as it is? I mean, I think, you know, lots of people would sometimes feel that this is what I've got and this is what I want to do. But how do you feel about that? If someone said, hey, I think I could do that for you.
That's a good question. You know, I haven't even thought about that one before. I don't know. I don't know how to answer that.
And you don't need to. I mean, I don't want to put you on the spot because, you know, it's not like this is not a 5-minute job at all. So, you know, if someone was to approach you to say, like, I could maybe do something with the graphics. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I quite like the way it looks. I think it's easy to find stuff. Navigation is piece of cake. I mean, that's all you want from a website. If you start thinking, well, I don't know how to get there. As soon as you start clicking the tabs and going to the different pages, it all comes up and it's all listed really easily. So there's not an awful lot, in my opinion, that would need to change. But I guess, you know, like Richard was saying, sometimes if you're thinking about development and where it can go to, maybe that's what it would take, a third person to come in and have a look at it. But we think it's amazing. We cannot tell you enough how wonderful it is.
Thank you.
Because to have put that much energy into our club, really, because we all love Forest. We're stuck with it for life, and that's never going to change. But to see you putting that in, and you know, you're updating it weekly with all the latest stats, it's incredible. So we absolutely salute you, Gary. We thank you on behalf of all the Forest fans in the world, because honestly, you're doing a service to us. We could go in there now and say, God, this guy is put in the time to give us this content. So I and Richard, we are going to push this every single time now. We're going to be mentioning it to everybody. We're going to be making sure we're firing people to thecityground.com to see what you've done, because it deserves to be looked at. It deserves to be read. You know, you deserve, you know, everyone to come to you and give you a pat on the back. So genuinely well done. Thank you very, very much for what you've done with that. It's an absolutely fantastic piece of work. Okay, we're going to move on because Mr. Spray has got a University of Oklahoma American football game to get to in the next half hour or so. So we ask everyone coming on to Talking Reds to to pick their personal favourite Forest 11. And Gary, this is your team that you've come up with. Cumberland's Reds are on the screen. I'm going to quickly read through it. And before I do that, I will say that Gary has gone very defensive with this lineup. He picked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Was it 5, 6 centre backs, something like that? 5 or 5 centre backs. So we've got Peter Shilton in goal, back three, and Larry Lloyd, Des Walker, Kenny Burns. Stuart Pearce as a left marauding wing back. Viv Anderson as a right marauding wing back. We've got Joe Worrell. I'll put him into midfield there for you as a deep defending midfielder. Brian Roy, who is not a midfielder at all, but he's going to have to play in that number 8 role because we've got John Robertson on the left, Stan Collymore through the middle, and Mr. Gary Birdsall, we put him as a kind of an inside right over there. So we love everyone's selection. It's a personal thing. It doesn't have to be the best player in their position, but just pick out 1 or 2 of those players and why you've chosen them, Gary.
Oh, thanks. Yes, obviously it's pretty heavy on the European days, and I think everybody's favorite team from then is going to have Shilton, Anderson, Larry Lloyd, maybe Kenny Burns in there as well. So that's probably why it was a little more defense heavy. But I think the most recent player out there is, well, obviously Joe Worrell, and that was just because of the time he put into the club, and seeing him move on was sad. But I don't think anybody wishes ill of Joe, and the best wishes to him wherever he goes. He's always going to be welcome back at the City Ground. Other than that, the most recent one is Stan Collymore. And oh my word, I mean, you remember the buzz when he used to get the ball, even like in the center circle when he'd get it? You'd almost stand up a little bit knowing that within 10 seconds he could have the ball in the net from almost anywhere in the opposition's half. Shilton, obviously, in goal. I mean, I could have gone with Mark Crosley there as well, just for the fun he gave me for years, just watching him play. But I kind of went with Shilton and Stuart Pearce, again, somebody that, you say Pearce, you associate him with Forest. So I think that was another thing as well. I like players who are, mainly associated with us rather than, I didn't pick Roy Keane just because as wonderful as it was to watch Keane, and we bought him for £2,000, I think, from Cove Ramblers. It sold him off to Man United, but he's a Man United player to me. He's, you ask anybody about Roy Keane, he's Man United. So that's probably why I went with those that mean a little bit more to me. And obviously some of those were only there for, 3 or 4 seasons. Brian Roy, even less probably. But he was a weird one as well. I thought about some of the players who I used to go and see, and I thought Brian Roy's technical ability was tremendous. So a weird choice for him, but
no, like I said, it is a personal choice. We will never argue with anybody because all Forest players in our eyes are equal. Maybe some more equal than others, but certainly some of those names stand out more than others. But yeah, thank you very much for sharing Cumberland's Reds with us. Okay, so we want to have a quick chat with you, Gary, about the latest Forest offerings. Yesterday, what a day that was. Yesterday, we had the news that Nuno Espirito Santo and Morgan Gibbs-White have been sanctioned by an independent regulatory commission. Fabian Hertzler, the Brighton manager, got a fine. Nuno Espirito Santo gets a 3-match touchline ban, as well as I think it's a £55,000 fine. Morgan Gibbs-White gets an additional 1-game ban. Okay, I know that he's probably injured, but that's not really the point, is it? And I think a £20,000 fine. So that news filtered through around lunchtime yesterday, Friday. So everyone's just about to get settled down to have their tea, when all of a sudden, the FA spokesperson on Twitter comes forward with yet another tweet to say that Nottingham Forest's Evangelos Marinakis has been sanctioned by an independent regulatory commission. So this relates to his being present in the tunnel after the Fulham game recently at the City Ground, where we lost that game 1-0. He's been found guilty. Yep, they found him guilty. And it's a 5-match stadium ban and a hefty fine to boot, which I'll be honest with you, I find absolutely staggering. Gary, what did you think about all of that when the news filtered through to you over in the States that these three very important players, our manager, our most important player, and our owner, it's like, what is going on? Sum up for us how you feel about all that.
I mean, first of all, it means all three of them will probably be sitting next to each other in the. I thought they were going to be sitting next to each other, also sitting next to Mr. Marinakis in the box. But if it's a complete ban from the ground, then I think it's either ridiculous or it was kind of coming. I feel we got promoted back 3 years ago, and I think everybody had missed Forest being in the Premier League. And I don't think anything Marinakis has done is any worse than 20 things that Brian Clough did. He got away with it back in, all those years ago. I think this has been coming, honestly. I feel we don't do ourselves many favors by bringing in Clattenburg, was it? The referee on board.
Yeah.
I felt that. Look, we had a lot of very, very good complaints last year about VAR. It went against us a lot. There were some terrible decisions against us. And I was always surprised that the referee in the Liverpool game last year, when he should have given us the ball after that incident, he stopped the play. He gave the ball back to Liverpool. Yet I don't see him getting sanctioned or any, things against him that are really public. Sure, maybe he missed a game, but that was just the icing on the cake after 4 or 5 terrible decisions went against us from VAR. But what do we do about it? Do we just be quiet? Do we accept it? Or do we make some noise about it? And quite rightly, we made some noise about it. Unfortunately, I think we lost some friends along the way. We lost our points because of I feel, poor management on the buying and selling of players. We obviously bought way too many players when we got promoted, I think. So again, I think the Forest are in the mentality of everyone's picking on us after we lost our points. So I feel that Marinakis is passionate about the club and he's going to say stuff. I mean, all this was as well after, we got fined £750,000 for his comment about the
it was the tweet
last year.
It was that tweet, wasn't it?
That tweet, yeah, which I think I do know that went out before the game anyway. I think
it went out. No, it went out on full time.
Was that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, people are going to say stuff. Gibbs White, I don't think he deserved to be sent off a couple of weeks ago. That was not.
The panel found in his favour. They found 3-2 that it shouldn't have been a sending off a second yellow card, and so they've even come out after the game and said that was a mistake, and obviously he's reacted, and they've still given him another ban. You almost want to shake some sense in them and say, well, look, on that one, can't you have said, look, you shouldn't have reacted the way you did in the moment. But given that there was subsequently a panel has decided it was a harsh one, we're not going to give an additional game ban. We're going to give a fine, and we're going to leave it at that. But it just feels like another kick in the swing. I mean, Richard, what did you think? If I can quickly come to you to get your view. I mean, do you think that there is maybe possibly a harsher elbow in the ribs coming at Forest from the powers that be because of the way that we've shouted and raised our head above the parapet? Because we have been a leading voice in a lot of things. We might not have gone about it in the right way. The tweet was probably ill-advised at the time, but I mean, £750,000. Gary's right. To mention that that's an astonishing amount of money for something like that, and then a 5-game stadium ban. I mean, did he get the referee in a headlock down there or something?
Yeah, the response, they talk about our reaction to things as being inappropriate and probably ill-advised, but yet they're setting new precedents, and their reaction to what we've done seems to be ill-advised and inappropriate, right? So I find it ridiculous that there's the root cause of these things are mistakes being made, as Gary touched on, being made by people that they put in positions, including associations led by someone like Howard Webb, who also came out because he came under intense pressure with all that went on against Everton, right? You know, specifically Ashley Young being at the center of that. And he admitted one of those decisions was wrong. They admitted, based off of the vote you just referenced, that the decision on Morgan Gibbs White was wrong. At some point, the collective outcomes of these things becomes really infuriating, because there's moments where this affects our ability to play the game the way that we want to and be successful, right? I mean, you're taking a guy who pumps in a considerable amount of money and saying you can't be present at your own club's matches. I mean, that's outrageous, right? And just by virtue of the inconsistencies both on the pitch in terms of how they're managing certain events within the game, it's the same thing as it relates to how they're managing these incidences as a collective, as a general rule, right? So they seemingly are treating us as sort of the exception to the rule, and that it's hard not to. People can call it conspiracy theories. Well, it's not a conspiracy when it seems like every single time we're involved in something, all of a sudden now there's a new precedent that manifests itself. So I'm going to be honest with you, I'm sick of it, and I honestly, genuinely believe they don't like us being somewhat of a rebel rouser, right? I mean, we talk about how. I think Ian referenced it in there, or Mark Hill talking about a stat around S-housery, right? They don't like us sort of taking that approach to things, because from their perspective, we're questioning the system, but the system's broken and it's inconsistent, and all we're doing is just drawing additional light to it. And so if you look at the root cause, though, if you don't do these things, if you don't make mistakes, yes, you're right, Greg, we've got to be measured in how we respond. And you know, probably in some people's minds a little bit more professional and frame things differently. But if those things don't occur as consistently as they have, especially when we're playing the match, then invariably we don't respond. So the root cause is based off of other people's ineptitude and inconsistency. And they're just not, like Gary referenced, they're not even addressing that. They're not finding referees. They're not going after anybody else. They're just coming after us to quiet our approach to it, or our response to it, which I just think is ridiculous. But
and obviously Forest are back in the Premier League, as you say, Gary, after 23 years. And when everyone always seemed to say, "Oh, love to have Forest back in the Premier League. It's where they belong." You know, we were, when I was back in the Clough days, as you referenced before, everyone's favourite other team, I think, because of the way that they were a provincial team that came out of nowhere. Clough got them into the European finals, won the things we won, went to Wembley, played football in the right way, he didn't want us arguing back with referees, all that kind of stuff. It gave us a reputation, and Forest, well loved, the city ground itself, well loved. But obviously 23 years out of it, you can get forgotten to a certain degree. You come back up. It's almost like they want you to come back up, but you got to make sure you know your place. You come back up, but you do as you're told, and the big six will get decisions, but you're not going to get anything, and you're going to have to suck it up, and you're going to have to just do as you're told. And if you say anything back, then we're going to come after you. Does it feel a bit like that to you, Gary? That really, you're on a hiding to nothing, really. I mean, is it going to change? Is there any point? Or is it just worth saying, you know what, whatever, let's just get on with it?
You've hit the nail on the head there. That I think every club is, and every fan is frustrated as heck with VAR. When it works right, great, but when it takes 2 minutes to work out if a goal was valid or not, that frustrates me. And then when they don't use VAR, sometimes when you think they should have done, it's wrong. But obviously, I only ever complain, and we only ever complain when it's against us. If if the Liverpool thing would have been the other way around, if we'd have got the ball and gone down and scored the other end, we'd have been laughing our socks off.
Well, they say things even themselves out, but the problem was, you're so right, Gary. It wasn't evening itself out, though. Everything was going against us in season 2 last year. It was ridiculous.
Yes, everything. There was so many things against us. You kind of lost count after a while of just how many bad decisions went against us. And we were the ones that were shouting about it. But what are we supposed to do? Just go with the status quo? Just say, yeah, it is what it is. They'll tweak it. I don't think Forest ever said, get rid of VAR. That was Wolves. Wolves put a vote to the Premier League, a couple of months ago saying, get rid of it. And they were outvoted 19-1. So Forest were one of the clubs that said, we're going to keep VAR. I don't think we're saying get rid of it. What we're saying is improve it. And how do you say improve it without, putting stuff out there? I think we're being penalized for just saying that there's a bad thing out there that we want to work with and make it better.
Yeah. Well, look, we go into Monday night without Nuno on the touchline. Time is short. Just very quickly, Gary, do you think that having no Nuno on the touchline is going to damage the team? Obviously, Morgan's out anyway. Marinakis, he's not in the stadium. I don't imagine that's going to affect the players. But the Nuno factor not being on the sideline, do you think that'd be a deciding factor for us or not?
I think if we'd had Gibbs White on the pitch, it wouldn't have been so bad. He's a good leader. I think Gibbs White can fill in Nuno's position on the pitch just fine. So I don't think that'd have been terrible. I mean, it's up to Ryan Yates probably now to be the captain and take control. And I think he's got the respect after being there so many years. He can do that. I think this is unfortunate because we need a win at home. We've got this game on Monday. And then we've got Leicester 4 days after it. I don't want to go to Leicester with a loss. I felt sick after we lost at home to Fulham. After all the hard work we'd done this season away at Chelsea, at Southampton and Liverpool, for us to lose at home to Fulham 1-0 was
it was a funny game, wasn't it? It was a funny game. It was an odd one.
Yeah. So I think I just want to focus on Monday on getting a win. That's what it's been 6-7 months since we won it. Obviously, that's with the close season, but it's been 7-8 games, I think, since we won at home now.
It feels a long time. It does feel a long time.
It does, yeah. And the away form is the only thing that's keeping us up there right now.
Which has not been the case for the last couple of years or so. Just before we move on quickly, Ryan Yates, in my eyes, is a club legend. He is the club captain. He has been on an interview on Forest Focus, which I'm sure many of you will have seen or are going to see. It's a really great interview, and his leadership is going to be crucial, as Gary suggests, on Monday night. Just quickly, he was asked actually the question, and we were talking about this on yesterday's podcast about does it make a difference playing under the lights? And it's quite funny because I've made a big kind of song and dance about I think playing under the lights does matter. I think it does get the crowd going, and it was quite funny because Ryan said in the interview with Matt Davis that exactly that. He said playing under the lights at the City Ground, 8 o'clock kickoff, the crowd are buzzing. He said it makes it special. It makes it come to life. So I'm hoping that he and all the other players can really rally round now, because it does feel like siege mentality. It's us against them. We've got to get our home form back to some kind of order. You're right, Gary. 3 points on Monday, and then I tell you what, if we can follow it up with 3 points at Leicester, 6 points in the space of 4 days. I mean, I'm getting excited even just thinking about it. But that's what we got to aim for, right? Okay.
And back on that, I mean, who's giving us games on a Monday and a Friday as well? That
do you know what I mean?
The whole,
do you know what I mean?
Right.
But you know what? Like, listen, we these players that haven't experienced it because none of them are in the Championship apart from Ryan, but Championship football was Saturday, Tuesday. So we, as a club, we were used to that. But yeah, listen, we got to suck it up, and it is what it is. They've had a break. I'm so looking forward to both games, and then of course we've got West Ham at home following that, and then Newcastle at home, which I'm going to, which I can't wait for, following that as well. So we've got an interesting 4 games coming up before the next international break. But in the meantime, it is now time for this.
The lightning round!
All right, Gary, you're probably familiar. The great institution, American institution that is Friends. So after the pattern of the lightning round Friends, quick fire. We'll rapidly go through these. A few, just a few seconds per question. So, what was your first Forest match live?
It was at home against Everton. Back in, let me take a look here, November the 4th, 1978.
Nice.
Anyone would think you got some kind of stats website that you could just go to and find these things out
on the fly. Yeah, that's awesome. Favorite Forest player of all time?
I probably got to go with Stuart Pearce. I think the passion, the everything he brought to the club, and then managing us as well, tremendous. Frank Clark could be close, but I got to go with Stuart Pearce.
Yeah, and the greatest nickname of all time is what we keep saying about him as well. Yeah.
Yes.
What player in Forest history would you like to see on the current squad?
Oh, wow, that's a great question. Brian Clough.
No, well,
Does that count? All right.
well,
I'm obviously defense heavy. We need goals. Stan Collymore, we need goals.
There you go. Yeah, I like that.
yeah,
Good choice.
yeah.
Well, your favorite away or third kit?
Oh, I grew up with the yellow kits. I always thought that, yeah, we were yellow. So when we changed to white and then blue and white stripes, it always surprises me each year that there's no consistency on the away kit. But I do like the blue and the white stripes right now. I'm going to go with that one.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
What is your favorite Forest moment or memory?
It's probably Cloughie's last game at home. Sheffield
yeah.
United. We were losing 2-0. If we lost that game, we were going to get relegated. We were 2 points, I think, behind Sheffield United. If they won, we were down. They were winning 2-0 with 10 minutes to go. The ground was lifeless. Then the United fans started chanting Cloughie's name. He gives them a clap out of the dugout. After that, it didn't matter. We were down, but the last 10 minutes of that are my favorite time in the ground.
That's
Yeah,
interesting.
that's incredible.
If you weren't a Forest fan, what club would you support?
Probably County, I think. I'm not one of those people. I think Forest County have probably a unique relationship there. There's no rivalry between us. So
Not really.
Absolutely.
No.
probably be
Yeah.
not.
Absolutely. Apart from Cloughie or Cooper, who is your favorite Forest manager?
Probably Frank Clark, I think. He took over after Clough, and I think we were on a roll, and we got found out after a couple of years, unfortunately. That home game, I think it was Bayern Munich in the UEFA Cup. We lost 5-0, I think it was. And unfortunately, I think Frank said I don't know what to do next, but I like Frank Clark. He's been a great ambassador for the club, and
Yeah.
I'll go with
Brilliant choice. If Forest could sign one player from a non-top 6 side, who would it be?
Ooh,
We're talking Aston Villa, Wolves,
Everton.
Everton, Bournemouth.
my
Brentford.
word, that's a great question. Duran scored some great goals for Wolves recently, so we need a goal scorer. So I'll take Duran from Wolves.
Gotcha. Who would you rather sell first, Merlot or Morgan Gibbs-White?
I'm surprised Gibbs White's still there. I mean, he's got that great relationship with Cooper. If Gibbs White pops up at Leicester anytime soon, then we're all screwed.
Oh gosh, yeah, that'd be horrible.
I want to keep Morgan Gibbs White. I know he's a little, but he's just broken into the England side. So let's keep Gibbs White. I think he's got a good few years of leadership still in him.
I would agree with that. Okay, Forest win the Premier League, but are then relegated into the Championship for the next 25 years. Would you take it?
Oh my word! Yes, I would. Strangely enough, I would. Yeah,
Interesting.
the Championship has got some great games in it.
Yeah, we were on a streak where most people were saying no, but then we've gotten a few people, right, Greg, in the last few episodes that have been like, yeah, it's incredible.
Like Leicester did it. You asked Leicester the same question 7-8 years ago. I wonder what they would have said.
Right.
You're still going to follow Forest, and you can still do your stats in the Championship. There's more games. So
That's right.
Yeah.
So why not?
Been in the third tier a couple of times. So
God.
Yeah.
used to
Oh,
this.
heaven forbid. Never again.
Amazing. Amazing.
Thanks,
Thank
buddy.
you so much. Brilliant. Okay. That was the lightning round. We are at the end. It's been an absolute joy and privilege to have Gary with us today. If you've liked this video, we hope that you will consider to like and subscribe to Talking Reds. We're on the path to 1,000 subscribers if we can by Christmas. Wolfie in the comments, hello mate. He helped us along in the last week or so with trying to add a few more from the Forest Fan TV brigade. So if you have liked and subscribed, we thank you so much for that, and we hope that you will come back and watch more of our episodes. We're very keen to have different guests on to fill that guest chair for our series of The One With. And today has just been a real joy and a real privilege. So Richard Spray over in Oklahoma, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you guys, Gary. Absolute pleasure, man.
Thank you. And if you ever use a stat, that will make me the happiest supporter ever. Please use the stats, reference. You don't even need to give me credit. Just to know that you're looking at it.
We will. Well, like I said, we are going to be pushing the cityground.com. I'm talking about it a lot more now. But Gary, over in Arizona, it's just about 6:30 in the morning for you there now, there or thereabouts. So you've got the day ahead of you. The floor is yours if you'd like to say anything before you depart.
Thank you for all you do. You're giving me a lot of credit, but you do this. You probably put up 10 times as much effort into your site that I put into mine. So the fact that you two do this week in, week out, Richard, you get up at the ungodly hour of whenever in Oklahoma. And
For the best reason ever.
go Oklahoma.
The greatest club on earth. Yeah.
Yeah. So you need twice as much thanks as you're giving me. You're giving me too much credit. Thank you for all you guys do.
No, thank you. We've made a friend, and that's one thing that Richard and I have spoken about. The podcast gives us a chance to meet new people, make new friends. You ain't getting rid of us now, Gary. So the world is a big place, but the podcast and the forest community can, make it a bit of a smaller place. So thank you so much for everyone in the comments and watching along and listening thereafter. This is Talking Reds. This is the one with Gary Cumberland.